It is Friday, so it is time for our national town hall meeting, Brunch with Bernie, with Senator Bernie Sanders, the guy I think of as America's senator, although Vermonters know he works for them particularly well. Senator Sanders, welcome.
Great to be with you, Tom.
Thank you. What's on your list for the day?
Well, two things. I hope everybody knows that on Monday evening there will be a very, very important vote in the United States Senate. And that vote will be on a constitutional amendment to overturn this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision, a decision which is undermining in a very significant way American democracy. We're going to need two-thirds of the vote. At this point, I don't know if there are any Republican senators on board, but I would hope that people all over this country reach out to their senators and make it very clear that American democracy is not about billionaires buying elections. There was just a piece, I think, yesterday in the Washington Post talking about how the Koch brothers alone have funded some 44,000 ads in the 2014 election. So what democracy is becoming is the average person has one vote, and the Koch brothers fund 44,000 ads and buy elections all over this country. Clearly, Citizens United is a disastrous decision. Freedom of speech does not mean the ability to undermine democracy and elect candidates throughout the country whose sole function in life is to represent the wealthy and powerful. So this is a very, very important vote, and I hope people get the word to their members of the Senate that they want a yes vote on this constitutional amendment. Tom, where we are right now is at a very pivotal moment in American history, and I believe, and I'm sincere about this, that we are on the verge or on the cutting edge of determining whether or not we remain a democracy where people govern, or whether we move toward an oligarchic form of society where the billionaire class not only owns a significant part of the economy, but as a result of Citizens United, they're now able to control the political life of this country. What is not often talked about, or virtually never talked about in the media, for I think fairly obvious reasons, is what do the Koch brothers stand for? I mean, it's one thing to be upset that anybody should be able to spend hundreds of millions of dollars, one family spending hundreds of millions of dollars. I think that's an outrage no matter what their political points of view are. That is not democracy. But I think it is also important to understand why these folks are spending so much money. What do they believe? Who are they? And as I think I mentioned before, in 1980, David Koch, one of the Koch brothers, ran for vice president of the United States on the Libertarian Party. And it's important to know the platform that he ran under, what he believes, because I have the strong feeling that they have not changed their views at all. And what they have done in an extraordinarily effective way in the last 35 or so years is taken the Republican Party from what was once what we call a moderate conservative party to now an extreme right party. This is what David Koch, and I'm going to read you some of the exact quotes. I'm not, doctoring this stuff. This is straight from their platform. This is what they believe. Quote, "We urge the repeal of federal campaign finance laws and the immediate abolition of the despotic Federal Election Commission." End of quote. What that means, and where the Republican Party is today, is that Citizens United does not go far enough for them. They want to end all campaign finance laws. That's what the Koch brothers were talking about in 1980, so that billionaires can give checks directly to candidates. They don't have to go through independent expenditures. So they say to candidate X, okay, here's $50 million, $100 million. Doesn't mean anything to us because the Koch brothers made $12 billion more last year. They're worth $80 billion, so what's $100 million? And here are your talking points, and here are the think tanks that will help you with your campaign. And that's American democracy. What they also talk about is very clearly, quote, "We favor the abolition of Medicare and Medicaid programs." Not cutting them. They want to end them. "We favor," the quote, "we favor the repeal of the fraudulent, virtually bankrupt, and increasingly oppressive Social Security system." That means, again, they're not talking about cutting Social Security, not talking about a change CPI. They want to end Social Security. Right now, as many listeners know, we are fighting to raise the minimum wage in this country. It is a terribly low wage of federal minimum wage is now $7.25 an hour. It's a starvation wage. This is what the Koch brothers believe about the minimum wage. Quote, "We support repeal of all law which impede the ability of any person to find employment, such as minimum wage laws," end of quote. That's what they said in 1980. In other words, the issue for them is not whether we raise the minimum wage, is whether we abolish the concept of the minimum wage. So that if you are living right now in a high unemployment area where jobs are very, very scarce, and an employer will come to you and say, yeah, I'm going to offer you $4 an hour. You don't want it? That's fine. I got 20 other people who will take it. There will be no minimum wage laws at all. Quote, this is what they said in 1980. And again, this is what their acolytes are saying today. "We support the abolition of the Environmental Protection Agency." And I want people to listen to this other provision, platform, part of their platform. This is what it says, and I quote, "We oppose all government welfare, relief projects, and quote-unquote aid to the poor programs. All these government programs are privacy-invading, paternalistic, demeaning, and inefficient. The proper source of help for such persons is the voluntary efforts of private groups and individuals," end of quote. Now, what that means in English is that every program out there, every piece of legislation passed in the last 80 years to provide help to low-income people, to working people, to senior citizens is gone. That means Head Start and child care subsidies, gone. Pell Grants for higher education, gone. Food stamp program and other nutrition programs, gone. They want to return us to a day where the billionaires have it all, and if you are old and sick, maybe somebody will give you some charity. Or if you're poor and hungry, maybe somebody will throw you a bone. That is their definition of freedom, and that is the direction they want this country to go into. And these are the people who are right now spending hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars all over this country to elect candidates who will protect their interests. And sadly, the media doesn't talk about this for fairly obvious reasons. But what we are looking at right now is an extreme right-wing movement to repeal every piece of legislation out there, virtually every piece of legislation protecting people in need. So on Monday night, we are going to be voting on a constitutional amendment. And I would hope that everybody in America pays attention to this, because I'll tell you something, Tom, this is not just a progressive issue. You got a lot of conservatives, you got a lot of moderates, you got a lot of folks all across the political spectrum who understand that democracy is not about billionaires being able to buy elections. So I would hope people pay attention to that. The other thing I want to mention to you, Tom, is last week I had the pleasure of being in North Carolina, South Carolina, and in Mississippi. And we did some town meetings in those states, and I had the opportunity to meet with a whole lot of great people who are organizing around social justice issues, raising the minimum wage, and so forth. And what I learned from the meetings, which were very, very well attended, we had very nice turnouts, is that the issues that resonate in so-called blue states are the same exact issues that resonate in so-called red states. And I don't believe in red state, blue state business. And I think we've got to get away from that line of thinking. I think that the vast majority of the people in this country, in every state in this country, are working people, are people who are struggling to keep their heads above water economically, to take care of their kids, and take care of their parents, need health care, education, decent paying jobs. And we've got to keep banging away at these economic issues and create a government that works for all of us and not just the billionaire class.
Amen. Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's Brunch with Bernie right after this.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And be sure to check out Bernie's website, sanders.senate.gov, and you can also easily find his Facebook page. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Randall, watching Free Speech TV on the Dish Satellite Network in Oceanside, California. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yeah, Senator. I have a question for you about high-frequency trading. What is the Senate doing about it? Also, the insider trading that is made legal to senators like yourself, have you ever taken advantage of it?
No. No, I have not. And I think that's a bit of an exaggeration. But I think the issue of high-frequency trading is just one more example of why the rich get richer and why Wall Street continues to get away with murder, creating financial tools, and in this case, a mechanism so that the people on the inside understand the system and are able to benefit from the system better than people on the outside. The real issue about Wall Street, more important than high-frequency trading, which is important, is the concentration of ownership which now exists on Wall Street. 5 out of the 6 largest financial institutions today are larger than they were when we bailed them out because they were, quote-unquote, too big to fail. And combined, they have assets equivalent to 60% of the gross domestic product of the United States of America. So I think if we are serious about creating a competitive economy, an economy where financial institutions provide the capital that small and moderate-sized businesses need to create jobs and improve our economy, we have got to break up these huge financial institutions. Now, this is a very tough goal because these guys have enormous power and they own a whole lot of members of the Congress. But bottom line is, when you have 6 financial institutions, Goldman Sachs and Bank of America and the rest of them, J.P. Morgan Chase, they are so powerful. I think we had to learn from what Teddy Roosevelt did 100 years ago and start the effort to break them up.
There you go. Excuse me. David, in Hutchinson, Kansas, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Good afternoon, Senator. With all the talk about going into Syria to get rid of ISIL, I have not heard a word about what Assad is saying about this. What's his attitude toward this anyway? Is he for it, against it, what?
Well, last I heard, that Assad is against independent attacks. He would like, obviously, he is fighting. This guy who's a demagogue and a terrible dictator is fighting for his life against ISIS. And he would like the United States and other countries to coordinate activities with him rather than do it alone. But let me say a general word about that situation. It is a terrible, terrible situation. People in Syria, to the tune of just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people or more, are being dislocated in a horrible civil war. And you've got 2 terrible groups fighting each other. On one hand, we have the ISIS groups, which, are incredibly brutal, want to bring their part of the world back into a 7th century caliphate with no democracy, killing people for any reason who disagree with them. And you got Assad, who's a horrible dictator himself. So how you bring stability to that region, how you eventually bring democracy to that region, how we make sure, in my view, that the United States does not get caught up in another ground war, how we work. I applaud the President for trying to bring some consensus and bring countries all over the world together, because ISIS is not just a threat to the United States or Iraq or Syria, it's a threat to the entire region. So.
On April 15th,
This is Joe, and this is Sarah. They're a fun-loving couple who love a good challenge, like the time she started dating Joe.
Oh.
And like the time he drank a gallon of milk. Or the time he almost ate a spoonful of cinnamon. You guys ready for another challenge? I'm not talking about the time you told your mom, I'm going gluten-free. Or when you quit Facebook for a whole week. I know how hard these things were for you both. I'm talking about a real challenge, one that will change the world. Are you with me?
Definitely.
This is the 4-liter challenge. For up to 5 days, you'll live on just 4 liters of water. That's 4 liters for drinking, cleaning, cooking, and bathing too. 4 liters, because that's the same amount of water that nearly 1 billion people survive on every day. So you're gonna need to get a little creative. How will you use your 4 liters? Go to 4liters.org to get started.
Welcome back. Senator Bernie Sanders on the line with us, and we are taking your calls. Charles, push the button again here and see if it takes it. There we go. Charles in Cleveland, Texas.
Hello?
You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I got a question for the senator. You were saying the Congress has the ability to limit the Supreme Court in certain ways. Could they pass legislation that it takes 6 or 7 judges to overturn laws made by Congress to sort of eliminate judicial review so you don't have these 5-4 decisions on important laws?
Well, we can pass, the American people, well, it starts in the Congress, can pass constitutional amendments to do anything we want to do. The immediate issue, Charles, right now is that on Monday night there will be a vote in the Senate to begin the process for a constitutional amendment to overturn the 5-4 Supreme Court decision on Citizens United, which allows billionaires to spend unlimited amounts of money. And that's where we are right now. And I hope very much that people rally around that and make sure their senators vote for this amendment.
Mike in Madison, Wisconsin. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Good morning, guys. I'd like to propose a question. Will we be able to limit the lobbyist revolving door by putting income limits on members of Congress while they're in office and for a 3-year term after they leave office?
Probably.
Rather than have term limits.
Well, I'm not. Let me just. Not quite sure I understand the question.
I think it's about trying. Eric Cantor just got a $3.4 million paycheck by going to an investment bank.
Well, shock. We're all very surprised with that. Look, the root cause of the problems in Congress, and I think, is the fact that we have a situation now where to get elected, members of Congress are dependent either on their own personal wealth, and a whole lot of members of Congress are very, very wealthy, or else they are dependent on the Koch brothers or other very wealthy people. That's it. And if we could overturn Citizens United and go further and have public funding of elections so that middle-class people and working people will have the opportunity to run for office and not have to worry about how they're going to raise money, I think we'd see a profound change in American politics. I think we need to strengthen significantly lobbying laws and to end this revolving door situation where people leave not only Congress, they leave the military, they're generals or admirals, and they go working for some big military contractor. And we do have to strengthen those laws, no question about it. But we have to go much further, and that is end the situation we have today where big money owns the United States Congress, and that's the most important thing in my view that we can do.
Dick in Smithton, Illinois. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Thank you for taking my call. Senator, you mentioned a vote coming up Monday on the Citizens United. I guess it's a Udall amendment. What's going to happen if that passes the Senate? What's Boehner and the boys going to do? Can you tell me? Thank you.
Well, I will give you my strong guess, and that is they will do nothing. The Republican Party, and Mitch McConnell in particular, who is the minority leader of the Republicans in the Senate, they have been very strong advocates of Citizens United. Mitch McConnell believes that Supreme Court decision was great. The Republican leadership nationally wants to go even further. They think Citizens United does not go far enough. They want to end, as the Koch brothers proposed 35 years ago, all limitations so that billionaires can put money directly into the pockets of candidates. Literally, sign them up. Here's your $100 million. Here's your script. Here are the consulting groups that we are going to give you. We own you. Now go to Congress. So the question is, what will happen if we pass this in the Senate? Where will it go in the House? Well, I suspect you'll have most of the Democrats or all of the Democrats voting for it. I do not know how many Republicans are prepared to vote for it, if any.
Okay. Harold in San Juan, Texas. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yes, thank you, Tom, Bernie. My question is on Medicare. You have Part A and B, and it came out in 2000 where you have to pay an extra $100 to have medical care under Part B. Most people under Social Security don't make very much money. Some people could buy Obamacare cheaper than, but they're low income under Social Security. Why do we have to charge people $100 for Medicare Part B? Thank you.
We have a minute, Bernie.
Well, hopefully we're going to see some reform in Medicare Part D, Harold. I don't have the information in front of me, But one of the things that we're trying to do is to get rid of that donut hole for prescription drugs. So after a certain point right now, people have to pay out of their own pocket. Our goal is to eliminate that completely and make sure that all prescription drugs costs are covered by Medicare Part D. That's kind of where I hope we will be going.
I think he was asking about Part B as in boy.
Oh, you're saying Part B?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that. I apologize. I don't know the answer to your question.
Okay. So it's basically the way the law has been written or something.
Well, I mean, what I will tell you is that at the end of the day, I believe very strongly that the United States has got to join the rest of the industrialized world for a national health care program which guarantees health care to all people without out-of-pocket expenses.
Right. About nickel and diming us to death. Right. Well said. Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program, our national town hall meeting. Senator Sanders taking your calls. Calls are up next. We'll be right back. Minutes before the hour. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Senator Bernie Sanders on the line with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour, our national town hall meeting where Senator Sanders takes your calls live and unfiltered. And Senator, you're with us?
Right here.
Okay. James in Spring City, Tennessee. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Good afternoon, Senator Sanders. How are you?
Good.
Great. Is it true that you're going to be putting your name in the hat and running for president in 2016? And if so, what can I do to help out?
Well, that's very kind of you, James. I am giving consideration to the possibility of running for president. It is a huge undertaking. I have not made a final decision, but it is something I am thinking about.
Steve in Orlando, Florida. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, Bernie, and thank you, Tom. Is there any place people can help out your campaign should you decide to run? Pledge in advance? I mean, I'm willing to pay within a week of your announcement. Just have a pledge website, maybe.
Well, Steve, thanks very much. You know, running for president, especially around the agenda that I would run on, is no easy task, and I don't want to do it unless we could do it well, unless we have a real chance to win this thing. And Steve, thank you very much, because if I were to win, we really need a political revolution in this country in the sense of many millions of people becoming actively involved in the political process. So if I make that decision, trust me, we will reach out to the American people in every way that we can to put together the strongest grassroots effort that any campaign has seen in the modern history of the country. But thanks very much for your support, Steve.
Andy in Chicora, Pennsylvania. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. The money that the billionaire Republicans, billionaire Democrats, and unions give to campaigns is used to buy ad time. Why do you believe that just because an American sees one ad more than another ad, that he's going to vote for it? I mean, I would think Americans would critically look at the ads, look at the candidates, and vote. So I don't see how you actually buy an election. Thank you, sir, very much.
Okay, Andy, good question. Look, let's recognize that the Koch brothers and their consultants and their advisors are not dumb people. They're pretty smart people. And they don't invest in things that do not work. I mean, there is a reason why, I guess, billions of dollars will be spent on television ads in the coming election. And the billionaires would not be spending that money if they didn't think it would work. Now, in some cases, do ugly, stupid, negative ads turn people off? Yeah, they do. But these guys are pretty smart. And they do a lot of polling, and they do a lot of focus groups, and they try to target particular groups of people, and they say, okay, how are we going to, get that 35-year-old guy who works there or works there? So to answer your question, Andy, I think that ads do work. And I think it is unconscionable and, in a sense, un-American that a handful of billionaires are able to spend hundreds of millions of dollars. And again, as I mentioned, there's a piece in the Washington Post. The Koch brothers have funded some 44,000 ads already in the 2014 election. And I don't believe that that's what democracy is about, and I believe that's why we have to overturn Citizens United.
Greg in Chicago. You're on the air with Senator Sanders. Greg, listening on WCPT. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Oh, well, thank you very much. My question is on the ISIL situation and this group of people that have just come up with all these weapons and all these supplies that are doing all this damage. Don't we know where it's originating from? And if I was to try to solve a problem, I would want to stop it at the source, and I don't really hear anybody speaking about that.
Well, good question, Greg. If I understand your question, and Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, Greg is asking where the weaponry for ISIL is coming from, the heavy-duty weapons they have.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the sources we know, and it is the United States government through the Iraqi army. As I understand it, these guys are operating a lot of equipment that was surrendered to them by the Iraqi army, which was given to the Iraqi army by the United States of America. So not only did the Iraqi army not fight, but actually surrendered very significant quality weapons to the enemy. But the second part, well, I don't know if it's the second part, but there are other people who are funding these guys. And you're right, we don't know enough about it. I have always had in the bottom, in my gut, the feeling that these billionaires, or God knows if they're trillionaires or whatever, who run Saudi Arabia, if it's not their government, they got a lot of princes and folks there, sheiks there, who have unbelievable sums of money, and some of them are into really, really, really fundamentalist, extremist type activity. And I suspect some of that money is coming from groups in Saudi Arabia as well.
David, in Indian Trail, North Carolina. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yes, how are y'all doing this afternoon?
Good.
Hello? Yes, I have a question for you. It seems like the Koch brothers, 90% of the time if I listen to X in Progress, within the course of the show, the Koch brothers are going to get knocked for giving money to causes they believe, or that would, not even what they believe, but would help them. Why is it that you never really hear an attack on certain people like Michael Bloomberg, who gives $50 million almost every year to fight against an issue that the Supreme Court is upholding in almost every single one of their rulings?
Talking about gun control.
Good question, David. The answer is, I think billionaires, whether it is the Koch brothers or Bloomberg, should not be able to buy elections, period. And that's why I support the constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United. Bloomberg feels very strongly about gun control. He is a billionaire, and he's spending a whole lot of money. I don't believe he has the right to spend unlimited sums of money under Citizens United, and I don't think the Koch brothers do. But I would say, David, we can't look at this. When we look at the issue, we have to understand that the disproportionate sums of money are not coming from the Bloombergs, although it's not, it's not nickel and dime stuff. He's spending a lot of money. But the vast, vast, vast majority of the money are coming from right-wing billionaires. And in my view, what Citizens United says to all of these people, regardless of their political views, sorry, you can't spend unlimited sums of money.
Tom in Tucson, Arizona. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Bernie, what can the President of the United States do immediately by executive order for veterans?
Well, thanks, Tom, for the question. Let me speak here as chairman of the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee. Here's where we're at. The major problem facing VA health care is the significant waiting periods that many veterans experienced in places like Phoenix and in other facilities around the country. Right now, the VA is working very, very hard to make sure that veterans on waiting lists, if they can't get into the VA and they're trying to expand VA facilities, working on weekends, working in the evenings, but they can't get into the VA, they're getting these people into private health care facilities. In the bill that we passed about a month ago, we put $10 billion into making sure that we deal with these waiting periods. We put $5 billion into making sure that VA facilities around the country have the doctors, the nurses, the other medical personnel, and the space they need in order to deal with these wait periods. Most veterans will tell you, not all, but most will tell you that the care they get at the VA is pretty good care, and that's what the American Legion, the VFW, and the major veterans organizations are saying. Problem we have is getting people into the VA in a reasonable period of time at a moment in history where we've seen millions more people come into the VA. So how do we accommodate people and get them into the system in a short period of time? That's the challenge that we have. The other challenge where the president is also working with us is dealing with the backlog in terms of the claims that people are filing. A lot of people are filing claims. We have made progress in going from paper to a digital system, but we still have a backlog that's too long, and that's something where the president can be helpful to us as well.
Matthew in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hello, Tom and Senator Sanders. I want you to know you're doing a great job and great work, and this is very important conversations that are going on. And I want to thank you very much. All the subjects that we've been talking about are very important, but I have one question, and it's why is the Democratic Party so quiet? Why isn't someone yelling at the top of their lungs, where's the fight?
About what, Matthew?
About voter suppression, Koch agenda.
Citizens United?
Yeah, there's nobody like, embarrassing as it is to say, but there's nobody like Rush Limbaugh out there blasting and screaming, but instead of lies, telling the truth about what's really going on. There's no focus point, no antenna.
Okay. Let's toss this to Bernie. We just have a minute.
Matthew, that's a great question. That is a very important question, and I'm going to take a moment to answer it. And the answer is, number one, there are a lot of people who are raising their voices, who are angry, who are trying to do everything they can to raise consciousness on these issues. But our side does not have Rush Limbaugh, who speaks to, 14, 15 million people every day?
Probably, yeah.
Does not have Fox Television, owned by a right-wing billionaire, Rupert Murdoch. Does not have a corporate-owned media which determines the issues that they consider to be important. Let's pick this up. This is an important issue that Matthew raised. Let's pick it up.
Pick it up on the other side of the break. We'll be right back. It's Brunch with Bernie. Senator Bernie Sanders taking your calls right here on the Thom Hartmann Program.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And be sure to check out Bernie's websites at sanders.senate.gov and over on Facebook. Just plug his name into the search engine. And welcome back. Bernie, you want to finish that thought?
Yeah. Matthew asked a question that I get asked a whole lot. Where are the Democrats? Why aren't voices louder talking about the real issues that impact working people in this country? And the answer is that in one case, Democrats are too conservative. But on the other hand, there are a lot of Democrats who are not, who are raising their voices. But what they are saying is not getting out. And what I just said, you have to look at what happens in America and who owns what. The Republicans have their own television network. It's called Fox Television. Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, but in terms of talk radio, you are out there, and there's some other great people, progressives out there doing talk radio. But what is it? Over 95% of talk radio is right-wing, yes?
Yes. Yeah.
Not an accident. That is what the corporations who put advertising on the air want. That is what the networks want. In terms of the mainstream media, they're also controlled by large multinational corporations. So the issues that are out there that impact working families get very, very little discussion. And I will give you one example. There is a lot of talk about the role that the Koch brothers play in terms of spending money on ads. As I just mentioned, Washington Post, big story. Koch brothers have funded 44,000 ads in the 2014 elections. Washington Post, a conservative, moderate newspaper. But very little discussion, or almost no discussion, in mainstream media, I've not seen it, about what the Koch brothers stand for. Very little discussion about the fact that real unemployment in America is not 6.1%, but it is 12%. Youth unemployment is 20%, and that we need a massive jobs program. Very little discussion about the fact that the United States is the only major country on earth that does not have a national health care program guaranteeing health care to all people. So what the media does is they pick and they choose those issues that they consider to be important. Now, a year or so ago, some of us got very upset because the Sunday news shows, for example, were not talking about global warming at all. Not at all. Well, virtually not at all. We wrote a letter, got some changes there. But the main point that I would make to you, Matthew, is you're right, Democrats are not strong enough, but some of them are. But their voices do not get heard. Do not get heard through a corporate media which is not particularly interested in hearing the issues that impact working people and low-income people and distribution of wealth and income.
Well, and isn't there also a qualitative difference between, for example, Mike Bloomberg putting money into gun control, which improves quality of life but doesn't help him at all, and the Koch brothers promoting politicians who deny climate change and want to cut their taxes?
And helps them because they own fossil fuel.
Right.
The answer is yes. But I think the more important point, frankly, is no, the Bloombergs of the world or, environmentalists who are billionaires, they should not have the right to spend billions, huge amounts of money. Yeah. What we need to do is, what we need to do is end the ability of of wealthy individuals to significantly influence elections. And while you and I may be more sympathetic to this point of view than the other point of view, I think we've got to end it and, in my view, move to public funding of elections.
Yeah. Is there any, we just have about 10 seconds. Oh, we're out. Okay. We'll be back with more of Senator Sanders right after this. It's 10 minutes before the hour. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders taking your calls. And Kurt in Los Angeles, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi. Good morning, Tom. Good morning, Senator Sanders.
Hi, Kurt.
Hey, I wanted to ask for a long time anyone who could give me an answer as to if the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, really owns the airwaves, who pretty much just leases frequencies, both radio and television frequencies, to different corporations. How come we, the people, can't have the FCC set aside some type of election channel or even like C-SPAN, and during election times have a 24-hour channel where candidates for presidency can have free, equal airtime, both on radio and television, where they can just get out whatever message they want, equal time for each candidate, and then outlaw the the private advertising for dollars or for votes, and just put it all on one free FCC for the people, who's the candidate, what's their word, and people can tune in and learn what it is my candidate has to say on an equal basis, right, rather than who has the biggest budget wins.
Well, Kurt, that's an excellent point. And Tom, if I'm not mistaken, more or less that exists in a whole lot of countries now, right?
It does.
So if you're running, I think in the UK or elsewhere, you're given a party is given a block of time. Parties are given, equal blocks of time, or there's some formula out there where candidates can get free time to address the people of this country, and private money cannot buy the time. So I think, Kurt, your point is an excellent point. And that is, and in fact, it would be a lot better, I think, and more informative for the American people rather than seeing 30-second ads. They actually saw somebody getting up there and talking, for 15 or 20 minutes or whatever about the real issues facing the country rather than doing some negative stuff and stupid stuff in a 30-second ad. So I think, whatever the formula might be, I don't know, Kurt, but I think your idea is a good idea.
Ken in Houston, Texas. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Oh, how are you doing, Senator?
Good.
Oh, I was calling regarding the Citizens United Amendment, and I hope you get that through. But my question is whether or not you think you can get some Republican senators to support it, and what kind of messaging could we possibly do to not only get some Republican senators to support it, but possibly some also Republican congressional members to support an amendment in the House?
Yep. Well, Ken, thanks for the question. I think the messaging is pretty simple. And I think it's messaging that the American people have been very clear about in poll after poll. And that is that just because you have a whole lot of money does not mean to say you have the ability to spend unlimited sums of money on campaigns and essentially buy elections. Very few people think that that is what American democracy is supposed to be about. So Republicans now believe that they are in the driver's seat because the Koch brothers, and not all of the billionaires, but most of the billionaires, Sheldon Adelson and others, are spending a heck of a lot more money for the Republicans than our Democratic billionaires spending for them. And so they like the status quo. And in fact, some of them want to go even further and eliminate all campaign finance restrictions. But I think the message is clear. I think the vast majority of people are in agreement with our view about the need to overturn Citizens United. And Ken, what we have got to do is get the word out. Get the word out. And when I mentioned a moment ago why the media, people said, well, why aren't the Democrats doing more? Well, you just take a look at this issue of Citizens United and see how often that issue is being discussed on the media. How many people in America actually know that there will be a constitutional amendment coming up on Monday night and have had the opportunity to convey their feelings to their members in the Senate? So, I think this is an issue the vast majority of the people are on our side, and let's get the word out.
Cammie in Davenport, Iowa. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hello, Sanders?
Yes.
Hi, I accidentally called you President Sanders to the lady on the phone. But I want to congratulate you on being the most common sense person in Washington, D.C. And I do want to give you kudos because money does win elections, because I ran a small campaign here and they threw a lot of money into his campaign and smutted my name pretty good. So money does buy elections, and I do agree that we need to have some public service announcements that need to get people out to vote and let them know that if they don't vote.
And Cammie, your question, I'm sorry, we just have 2 minutes left until the end of the show.
Are you going to run for president? I heard the rumor that you have a committee here in Iowa, and because I'm from Iowa.
Well, a committee was formed. I didn't form it. So we have some support in Iowa. And what I've been saying, Kenny, is I'm giving thought to it because I think that the working families of this country are being battered so badly. Median family income is going down. Unemployment is much too high. We have more people living in poverty. We have 40 million people without any health insurance. Kids can't afford to go to college. These are issues that we need discussion on. We need somebody out there to be representing the vast majority of the people who are getting beaten over the head every single day at the exact same time as the billionaires and the large corporations are doing phenomenally well. So I am giving some thought to it, and actually I'm going to be in Iowa next week, and thank you very much for your support.
Senator, we have a little less than a minute to wrap up the show. Thoughts for the week?
Well, my thought is there's been a lot of discussion today on Citizens United and campaign finance issues. The vote on Monday night is an enormously important issue, and I wish there had been more media attention to it, and I hope we will see more immediate attention to it. Because what this vote about, this constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United, to begin the process of overturning Citizens United, is perhaps the most important issue that we are wrestling with right now. And the issue, and I said this earlier in the program, is whether or not we remain a strong democracy where everybody has one vote, or whether we move toward an oligarchic form of society where a handful of billionaire families can buy elections and undermine what we stand for as a democracy. So it's a huge issue. I hope people get involved in it. I hope they call up their members of the Senate, get their friends to call as well.
Senator Sanders, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom. Take care.
Good talk.